Hello, and thanks again for tuning in. This is Yoga for Vets podcast, episode number 5. My name is Randy Hamlin. I usually spend time in the beginning doing some updates about the organizations that are in our community that offer free yoga and meditation to our veteran population and their families. But this episode, I'd like to share with you an experience that I had last week. I took a trip over to Tampa and was able to finally meet with Annie Okerlund, who's the founder of Exalted Warriors. Spending some time with her, talking about her passion, how she got started working in the veteran community, teaching yoga with certain protocols, her time at Walter Reed Hospital, and of course her involvement with the Warriors at Ease organization. So that's coming up in the clip a little bit later. So I arrived at her studio in time to get my camera set up and get ready for the interview, and she asked if I would like to join her in the class, one of the classes that she was teaching for her veterans. So of course I jumped in on that. It was a pretty good mix of both males and females, and there was a good group of attendees from the team Red, White, and Blue, who I got to meet some of them afterwards and learn about them a little bit. So one thing in particular that I felt was the way that Annie creates a safe and a comfortable space, easing us slowly into each of the poses with good explanations and multiple modifications to allow the body to feel the breath and the movement. So it was a great class, and I was able to learn some new modifications that I'm going to borrow, in case you're listening, Annie, thank you, for some of the classes that I teach. So after the class, they have a little get-together, and it was really great to see how they all bonded together, discussing what they felt in the class and opening up to each other. The camaraderie there was very, very strong. The community there is very warm and very, very strong. So kudos to you, Annie, for working that out. And I was also able to meet a Marine Corps veteran turned yogi, and his name is Nicholas Karras, and I was able to interview him there also, which was a bonus for me. I'm going to wait and share that with you in another podcast. So after that, she graciously allowed a little bit of time with her to let me film the interview. So watch the clip and enjoy. It's a little bit lengthy, but it's well worth the watch. I'll get back with you right after this. So today I'm in Tampa, and I took the run over from the East Coast to finally meet Annie Okerlund, who I've been trying to hook up with for a while. Yeah, a long time. And of course, the way things are, things don't work out the way you plan them. So I'm very grateful that you're able to take the time today. By the way, I really enjoyed your class, and I got some clips on that. So hopefully in the podcast that I'm going to run, I'll be able to put some of that in with this interview. So I always try to do everything very casual, and we just basically wing it. Cool. And for the viewers that really don't know who you are, it's probably a couple people in the world that don't know who you are. Could you, throw in a little bit of history, maybe how your passion got started with yoga and helping, our veterans and our active. So
Okay. Gosh, I've been doing yoga now since 1996, which is kind of a long time at this stage. And when I first came back to Tampa, before I went to my first training, which was a Bikram yoga training in LA in 99, I found a class, a Bikram class, and met this huge guy in the class, big brick dude, wider than the door frame, and made friends with everybody in the class. It was a small group of people. I went off, did my Bikram training, came home and hit it hard. I was a militant Bikram teacher for all of about 3 months, and then I realized, I need to soften this a little bit. This gentleman turned out to be now a very, very dear friend of mine, but he was an active duty Rear Admiral Navy SEAL. And when I first had him in my studio, I couldn't look him in the eye. When I first realized what he did for a living, I was like, oh, who am I? Anyway, we practiced together all the time. I mean, sometimes he'd do a double, and we would just talk and talk and talk about yoga and how it was changing his body and how it was helping him in this sort of find this decompression that he didn't even realize he needed, which was kind of a sneaky thing. So then fast forward 10 years, in around 2006, he had moved back to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and had gone to see an injured SEAL at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in DC. Called me immediately and he said, we have to do something. I was like, what do we do? I don't know. And he had met a young couple. The husband was a high double above the knee EPT, special forces guy, and the wife was like, I just want to go back to yoga. And the Admiral always traveled with yoga mats in his car. He's like, if we leave in 15 minutes, we can get to this yoga class down the road. And she's like, I don't even know who you are. But
yeah, it does change you.
It really, right? And the passion that he exuded for this, she thought, she had said to him at one point, I really feel that yoga would help my husband. And not necessarily the physicality piece, but just the resting and the slowing down. So that kind of got the wheels turning, and we went through all the proper channels. We went to command surgeon at SOCOM, who had been a dive buddy of the admirals in BUDS training, and we presented to the hospital that how can we support you? What can we do to support you?
This is 2006?
This was 2006, yeah. And so the colonel who was in charge of the physical therapy department there said, my staff is exhausted. What can you lead a yoga class for my staff? So I ended up being thrown into the next day. She said, well, this is wonderful. Come up whenever you can. Since you're here, can you teach a yoga class tomorrow? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I can. So I was running through the hallways, grabbing soldiers, saying, come on, you look really strong. You're going to come do a yoga class. So I made tons of mistakes in that first class. But I also realized that this idea of this passion that I had for helping people in their bodies actually then expanded immeasurably to, it's one thing to feel comfortable in your body, but what we're really aiming for is the comfort in the body and the ease in the mind. And especially after a traumatic injury or a traumatic experience, that ease in the mind is even further away than finding it in the body. And so that's what really got me started, and I was very blessed to be supported by several nonprofits around this area to fly up to Walter Reed every 4 to 6 weeks. And as I worked with the staff, I was then slowly, meeting the staff, meeting more patients, and working with the patients individually. So I got just one-on-one with, injured and amputee patients and just asked tons of questions. I'm really annoying that way, asked a lot of questions.
I could see
lots
that.
of things. After doing me for about 5 hours.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Well, it's that I like to think of it as the passion of wanting to just know more. Because
it is passion.
And I feel when I teach other yoga teachers now how to work in this type of setting and with this population, we sometimes have the desire, I have to have so much knowledge, and we do, but as yogis we need self-knowledge, because what we're really doing is welcoming someone on the human level first.
Right.
And even though I might walk in and go, ooh, what do I do with this particular presentation of this injury? Every injury is totally individual, I don't know, but I do know as a human what I feel from someone and what I can portray or what I can share with someone. And that, when I get nervous sometimes, I come back to, I'm a human and I'm here to help a human.
So on the Walter Reed end, is it, what style? Did you have to create some sort of protocol in order to work with severely injured?
Yeah, basically, I mean, now I have a protocol. I've had a teacher at Walter Reed for 8 years, and his name's Daniel Hickman. He's a wonderful teacher. He teaches a very investigative, I can never say that word, investigative, like, check it out. What does your shoulder feel like? What does this feel like? And it's very flowy without being all over the map.
Yeah, I like that.
It's beautiful, because we all kind of think, you know, my shoulder, oh, today my shoulder's a little cranky because I slept funny or this and that. And I think the language of allowance is so important.
It's amazing sometimes just that phrase or that cue brings that awareness into that person and like, oh yeah, my shoulder.
Right. Like the guys we had in class today, a couple of them brand new, but just saying, hey, you know, find it, see where it feels best. And one of the guys was investigating. And what's great, we know from neurobiology that a investigative or an inquiring mind is a healthy nervous system. And so when you see someone shutting down like that, that natural inquisitiveness disappears. And so it's always good to invite it.
Yeah, bring them back a little bit.
Exactly.
In a yogic way.
Exactly, with the awareness.
I've been following you for quite a while, you know, through social media, and I know recently you've been on the go. You remind me of somebody very close to me too on the East Coast that travels and teaches and just spends their entire life basically giving back. So I really commend you for the work that you do and your passion. Were you just recently up at Kripalu?
I was.
Yeah.
So part of the really interesting way of getting into Walter Reed, I found myself all of a sudden in this military hospital thinking I'm a lone soldier trying to get this program together, get the awareness of yoga, and someone said, have you met the iRest Yoga Nidra teacher here? And I thought, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. And so, funnily enough, I brought Matthew Sanford, who's a wonderful teacher, into the hospital at Walter Reed to work with the amputees. And so she said, I met her and she said, I'll help you get the word out to the DC teachers. So it was a wonderful combination of guys who were there for treatment, yoga teachers in from all over the DC area. And so I ended up meeting Robin Carnes, who was the iRest teacher for the study that they were doing at Walter Reed on the efficacy of Yoga Nidra with combat veterans. And it totally changed not only how I teach, but how I take care of myself working with traumatic injury. Because it's hard not to take it on sometimes.
Absolutely.
And the intensity of the experience that people are going through.
You have to know how to release some of that protection for ourselves.
Exactly, and allow, and the vulnerability piece from the civilian sense of vulnerability, which is always an interesting conversation. So it was great to meet them and then have this experience with Matthew, but then really dive into Yoga Nidra, iRest Yoga Nidra for myself. And then, so what happened is she ended up starting a wonderful program called Warriors at Ease, and we train other yoga teachers how to work in a military setting. This is fabulous training. I teach the level 2B piece, which is adaptive yoga. So I've been very blessed to work at Omega, Kripalu, different studios around the country. I have my own trauma training that I teach. And I just recently sold my studio after 17 years. So now I'm a little bit like free bird.
Yeah.
And I get to get out and travel and still pick my son up from school as almost every day.
That's that's hopefully a really nice transition.
It's been extraordinarily wonderful.
Yeah, 17 years is a long time to be anchored.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think.
But you built the whole, a lifestyle, through that, being in that one area and expanding and teaching and allowing yourself to grow and be educated and travel and expand yourself, and to share that with a lot of other people. So.
And meet great people like you.
Yeah, it was really great that I got to come over, and you have a great group of people here, and some really heartwarming vets that, I meet a lot of vets, and I teach veterans, so, that's where my heart is. But it's always really kind of neat to go to a new area and see, how the teaching is done, the effect of it, and where our brothers and sisters are at on the mat. So it's a great experience for me. And it's also a very healing thing for me to be able to do this. This is my passion, and I'm kind of selfish about what I do sometimes. So a lot of this is for me also. So I'm able to share that at least with people that tune in. So.
Well, and the great thing is, by you sharing your story and being here to witness, and really it's witnessing what we're doing as teachers, I think, witnessing someone else's experience, validating, this was mine, I feel you. A lot of the time, and I think that's why I've always felt really strongly that the yoga studio is like, for our veterans and their families, is like the next sort of, what do you call it, like a civic center, like come and hang out, because it's a secure space for whatever you're going through that day. And that's what I love about what you saw today. The VA brings in the patients to the class, because they know
That's
only
a big thing.
It's wonderful,
that they're acknowledging.
they're so on board, which is great. And actually today was a small class. Normally we have like 35, 42
Wow,
people.
yeah,
I think the most we've had was 42, and it's a little chaotic.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that the practice itself can be done anywhere, but if you have a secure space to go to, you're expanding someone's space and someone's experience in another place in their life is safe, besides being home. Because we all know that sort of physical, mental, emotional, like when the retreat happens, the isolation kicks in.
Absolutely.
And it becomes, and if there isn't a successful reach out from their own experience, the pullback happens.
It's consuming.
And that's all that happens, the cycle of isolation maintained. So I've always felt really strongly that if you run a yoga studio, offer free yoga for vets, like you guys, because it's a place, like a community center. And that's really what a yoga studio is.
The part that I love the most was, and continue, is the camaraderie and the brotherhood that's formed once again, because my experience when I returned from Vietnam, even as I had a group of guys that I worked with, and we were very close, and everybody's always heard stories about teams and this and that. But when I got out, I didn't have any connect with them at all. I was very isolated. I was very despondent about everything, and I went through ups and downs, and I had waves of being productive and then waves of being in my crap.
Deep in it. Yeah.
Very deep in it. And the thing is that in the military, we are taught, to be strong, to be warriors, to be prepared, to not necessarily show emotions or cry or whatever, but we're not trained at all when we get discharged from the military how to reintegrate back into society, and that causes a lot of problems, and that's something that I dealt with for many years. And once I got turned on to yoga, all that changed. That was a modality for me, and I've tried many, that resonates the most.
Wow.
And it's, the breath work and the routine of just trying to learn how to be calm. And once you're calm, that awareness comes in, and then you can kind of go to work after that a little bit, but you got to get there first. And I run into that so often where, both family members and vets, because the family members go through just as much trauma as, whoever's in service at the time. So
I've always been really amazed at this statistic that one person with PTS affects 40.
Yeah, really.
And that's one big radiance.
That's a scary number.
It really is. And I think that's why, and you probably heard me in class, I always bring it down to self-regulation. Because if we can't control this, and it's not that we're controlling anything, it's actually kind of a flip, and we're welcoming, okay, that's the thought that's rising right now, but I'm with my breath.
I like that. Welcoming it. I like that.
And that's a very I-rest thing. But that was so impactful to me because we all have our own stuff, and so I kind of felt that I was always, like, when I first started meditation, I was like, I'm always doing inner ping pong, like boop, 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 bopping thoughts away. But when I let the thought come and go, and I could just sit back and see it and say, thank you for being there, the fight stopped. And that's a big piece, I think, for most people, just allowing and welcoming. And it's less forceful. Because I think we all have the ability to be forceful, but it's the softness that is hard. So that's why I always say,
just allowing it and being aware of it is, that was a challenge for me. It still is sometimes.
It still is.
When I sit down and try to get quiet, I'm doing the ping pong thing for sometimes way too long. But I just acknowledge it and let it go.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it clicks. So.
And that's the piece I always try to get across. Like, there's no way to do this wrong. Physically, if you're in pain, it hurts. Don't do that. We don't have to be in that state. And I always love it, because I'm goofy and I allow that to come out. And when I was saying something about delicious, I walked over to one of the guys. I go, how's that feel? He's like, well, I think. And so we put a block under his arm. And he goes, how's that? And he was like, oh, it's delicious. I was like, fine. So I love it when they make fun of me because it means that they're finding a comfort.
And they're listening. And they're tapped into what's going on. Great. What do you got planned for the future now that you've kicked free from your obligations with a big studio now?
More picking my son up from school, which is great, and I've got some more trainings coming up. I'm actually, we have a really big Warriors at Ease Level 2 just outside Fort Bragg, and it's a big group, and it's military spouses, some active duty, which is just so exciting and enlivening because that means that we're getting the foot in the door even further. But it's boots on the ground.
Yes, it is.
Versus, it's bottom up versus top down. So
it's finally good to see boots on the ground.
Right.
I mean, actual.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
When is that happening?
That is actually happening the last weekend of October.
Oh, that's coming up.
It is, and I'm teaching my trauma training in Asheville in the following weekend, November 4th through the 6th, excuse me. And then I'm teaching more I-Rest retreats. I teach a silent I-Rest retreat for a weekend. That's coming up in February, and more I-Rest workshops around this area and around. So a lot more trainings and stuff like that. And more.
Are you feeling good about it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous. I was a little bit like, oh my goodness, how's this going to happen? I work with a company, and they do a lot of yoga for first responders. So I've been working with the Boston Fire Department on sleep hygiene and I-Rest Yoga Nidra. So that's great because so many of our veterans are just laterally transferring right into service.
Right.
First responder service.
Yep, sure.
And so my guys, it sort of hit me like, wow, they're literally going from one fire to the next. And so again, self-regulation in that experience is really important.
Put those tools in their toolbox and
they got it.
Coming in, I noticed a big red, white, and blue banner awning. Are you guys all connected together with that? Because I see them a lot on social media, and I'm starting to promote them a little bit as I learn about them. So
they're extraordinary. So Team Red, White, and Blue is a veteran service organization run by veterans, and then there's almost 200 chapters now throughout the country. The easiest thing to do is go to teamredwhiteandblue.org, find your chapter, and within generally 24 to 48 hours, you have an email from the captain, the chapter captain. They do all sorts of physical activities with veterans and non-veterans. And the beauty in that is that it's creating community for veterans, but it's also allowing community, civilians, to step in and be engaged, because so many, I don't know if you've experienced this, so many people go, what can I do to help you? But I'm only a civilian.
Right.
And it's a very, it's an awkward space, I think, for civilians.
It is, yeah.
We just don't quite know how to do it, and sadly there's a lot of challenging press to working with veterans, I think, sometimes, so people get a little nervous. But they really do a great job. Nick and I have taught with them, and they do yoga camps. Each region of the country does their yoga camp. So we just had yoga camp last week, and we bring in Team Red, White, and Blue chapter people from all over the country, and we go through different styles of yoga, why meditation is important, so that they have that ability, and then I find them yoga teachers in their area,
right,
so that we can just continue this, offering
kind of an
yoga
introduction to it, and let them find their niche as far as what they like. Huh?
And they do run clubs and rucks, and they just ran the American flag across the country. I mean, there are just so many different ways to get involved. We're lucky here in Tampa because their headquarters is right behind the studio, which is kind of great. So I always joke that this is the best veteran service organization corner in the country.
That's awesome.
Pretty active.
How are they funded?
They get great funding by wonderful grant writers, all over, tons of different groups. I know Home Depot, Bob Woodruff Foundation.
They got some big support.
Big support.
That's good.
Yeah, and they're just a wonderful group of guys and gals, and they do podcasts as well. So
that's where I saw them.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's wonderful.
Great. Listen, Annie, thank you so much. I know you're getting ready. You got another meeting back to back, so I'm going to cut you loose. But once again, thanks so much for allowing me to hook up with you and spend some time with you. I had a great time.
I'm delighted
you have really warm people here that you're surrounded with, and I was really impressed with that. Coming in cold and then meeting people, you can tell, where the energy's at and what it's all about. So thank you once again.
Thank you. I'm going to hug.
All right.
Thank you so much, Randy.
Take care.
Great having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm back. I certainly hope you enjoyed the clip with Annie Okerlund. I know I certainly had a great time meeting her and some of the veterans over there. Please stay tuned for the next podcast. It will be featuring Nicholas Karras, also from Exalted Warriors, Marine Corps veteran, multiple tours, turned yogi and teacher. So stay tuned. This is Yoga for Vets, serving our vets and our troops, one breath at a time.